For the Haters presents Wallet Therapy. I'm Becky, the spender.
And I'm Alex, the coach. We give money advice for the everyday person. So join us with your budget and your baggage because money doesn't have to be messy forever. Search For the Haters and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wallet Therapy. Thanks for being here. Happy you guys are here. Welcome back. We have a fun episode today because we listened to our Patreon members. And so this episode is dedicated to you guys. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm deep in house renovations. So that is how I am.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm starting to get excited. We're not too far off from when we are coming to New Jersey, too.
We are going to be IRL in a month from now. Alex is coming to visit for Bex's first birthday party, which I can't even believe that we're saying that because in 1 month, when this comes out, it'll be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Bex will be one. And
that is crazy.
But Bex has become a Lowe's kid. We have lived in Lowe's for the past couple weeks. Loves the fan aisle. Yeah, that's interesting to be talking about financial things because what's more expensive than renovating a house? Good thing is that we have the budget to do so because we put in quite a bit of money into our house. So we're not putting out money we don't have. That is all good news to everyone that cares about my finances.
I think everybody cares, and that's why they were so excited for us to do wallet therapy.
And that's what I'm talking about. All right, this week we are talking about what do we do when we have a kid and how do you actually invest in them, right? There's 529s, there's IRAs, there's brokerage, there's everything. And it's like, what do we do first? When I had Bex, one of the first things that I did was call Alex and I said, hey, what account am I supposed to open for him? Because I didn't want him to be just stuck with like a college fund. I feel like this really happens to a lot of parents. If you're listening, you don't have a kid and don't plan to have kids, this is really great information to have to award to a friend that has a kid. Don't just skip this episode because you're kidless, but like this could be helpful for maybe friends of yours. I feel like that there is pressure to make all the perfect financial decisions always and immediately. And if I did for a lot of people, if you don't start right when they're born, then it's too late, which isn't the case. But I think becoming a parent adds like so much emotional pressure and weight where suddenly you feel responsible for your child's entire future. And that is not a burden that I'm going to carry.
And I think it can be hard because, like you said, there are so many accounts out there, there's so much advice out there, and there's social media that's making people feel worse because now you're comparing timelines instead of focusing on what actually works for your own family. You're comparing it to what other people are doing. And that's why we are going to talk through each of these account types today, because the answer to this question, what should I do for my kid in terms of investment accounts, that answer is not going to be the same for every family. There's multiple good options. Every account has pros and cons, and you have to look at those to see which work for your family. And so there's just not one perfect answer.
Here's a breakdown of what we're going to talk about. What are these accounts, how they work, what the tax implications are, and how they may or may not make sense for you.
Exactly. We're just really here to provide education and clarity, not pressure to open these accounts.
Speaking of that, I feel like before we even get into the accounts, I feel like we need to address the guilt that parents feel around this because a lot of parents are wondering, should I be investing for my kid?
That comment because it is actually a huge part of financial security and stability is having your own finances together before you are saving and investing for your kids. We haven't talked about what that looks like yet in its own episode, but due to all the feedback from our members on Patreon, that's why I wanted to have the topic for today. But I think it is really important for people and parents to understand you still need emergency savings. You still need retirement contributions. You still need financial stability because sacrificing your own future to try and give kids everything is really not the right move because eventually your kids will pay. You can borrow for college, but you cannot borrow for retirement. And whether you're out there and you may have this thought where, well, my kids don't have to worry about it, that'll be my problem. Your kids love you and they care about you, and your problems will be their problems. So the best thing you can do for your kid is have your own financial stability first. So to clarify, this does not mean don't help your children, don't save for their education. It just means that balance matters, and having your stability first is more beneficial to your children's long-term stability.
And that in itself should remove some guilt because I think parents feel pressure to put themselves last financially, but in the end, you putting yourself first ultimately puts your kids first too.
Absolutely. And if you're listening today and thinking, I am not in a position where I can do open any of the accounts because you're still working on your financial stability, there are still things that you can do to help your kid now until you get to a place of financial stability to potentially open one of these accounts. And those are things like you can open a high yield savings account that we've talked about before and keep that account, name that account your child's name and keep money separate in that account. If they have birthdays and people are sending them money and cards instead of gifts, or holidays, Christmas, then that's already building some financial wealth for your kid just by putting that money aside. Another thing you can think about is just creating positive money habits and education at home. This can start as young as 3 years old and something as simple as like letting them pay at the grocery store. But if you can instill good money habits in your kids, that is going to help them leaps and bounds, and maybe even more than you just like investing for them and handing them money.
Yeah. I think that this all leads also to the concept around financial burnout as well. When you're prioritizing different needs and not trying to do everything at once, like finding that, healthy balance of not putting too much of a burden on yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Mhm. Oh,
Burnout's nobody.
let's start out with the one people hear about constantly, the 529.
It is a education investment account and it is designed for qualified education expenses. The investments are put in after tax. So this is money that's already taxed and then it grows tax free when used correctly. Things that this can be used for: college tuition, books, room and board, some K through 12 tuition, and trade and vocational programs. Now, there's technically no annual IRS contribution limit for a 529, but gift tax rules do apply. What the gift tax rules are for 2026 is an individual can generally gift up to 19,000 per child annually, and married couples can gift up to 38,000 together without triggering gift tax reporting requirements.
Okay, but what happens if the money gets withdrawn for something other than education?
Here's the breakdown. If they're qualified, so if they're used for something I just talked about, which is like the education, room and board, books, those are tax-free and penalty-free. If you have non-qualified withdrawals, the earnings portion becomes subject to ordinary income tax plus a 10% penalty. So for
Mm.
example, if you contributed 20,000 to a 529 and the account grew to 30,000, that extra 10,000 is the earnings portion that would be taxed if you withdraw it for non-qualified. There are some exceptions where penalties could be waived, but really high level, the pros to a 529 are there are strong tax advantages. There's high contribution potential, so you can contribute a lot to it. There are some state tax benefits in some states, and you can change beneficiaries. On the flip side, and this is a big stickler for some people, and I know for you and myself why we're not choosing a 529 account, is there's less flexibility. So uncertainty if a child's educational path changes, or maybe like we just don't know and we don't want to force our kids into going to school just because we have this 529 plan. And there's those penalties for the improper withdrawals that we just talked about. A lot of parents worry about locking money into a future they can't fully predict. And if that's the position you're in, the 529 may not be for you.
I think that's what scares most people is like, what if your child chooses a completely different path? Like, I can't imagine, like, what is a college degree going to mean in 15
Yeah.
years from now? Right. Like, is that going to be a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. And if you want flexibility, then that's when we look at some of these other accounts we're going to talk about. A 529 plan works best when education savings is the clear goal.
Now we're entering the acronym territory. What even is a UTMA?
These are investment accounts and they are essentially custodial accounts. You are opening an account, an investment account for your child, and it's managed by an adult until your child legally becomes an adult. It's either 18 or 21, depending on the state that you live in. And unlike 529s, these custodial investment accounts, they're not restricted to education. So there's broader flexibility there. And there is no official annual contribution limit either, but the same gift tax rules apply that we just talked about.
I know everyone's thinking it. What happens when the child officially becomes an adult?
Yeah, so at 18 or 21, depending on the state, the account legally becomes fully theirs and they can withdraw the money however they want. And that part, some parents love and some parents find terrifying. I would have to say I find that terrifying, but that's just what works for my family.
I also found it terrifying because I couldn't imagine giving my 18-year-old self any amount of money.
Exactly.
Oh, what about the taxes for these custodial accounts?
This one can actually trigger something that's called the kiddie tax. And what that really means is that the first $1,350 of unearned investment income is generally tax free. And the next 1,350 is typically taxed at the child's tax rate. But anything above 2,700 will actually be taxed at the parent's tax rate. That is a negative to say if you are choosing this account to think that you are getting tax advantages because it will be at a super low child tax rate. If there is potential for you to be investing more, this may not be the account for you because it will just match the parent's income tax. And really, this rule exists to basically stop wealthy families from shifting huge investments into their child's name just to avoid taxes.
So once an investment income gets high enough, the IRS basically steps in and says, nice try. Nice try there, bucko.
Exactly. For most families contributing smaller amounts, this usually isn't a massive issue, but it is important to understand how the rules work because again, this account may not be the one for you. And just to simplify, when we say investment income, when the money invested makes money, not the money you actually contributed.
Hmm, got it. Give us some pros and cons to this style of investment.
Pros are flexibility because it's not just tied to education. You can take it out for anything. There's a broad use of funds. So that means what you are actually investing the money in. And you can use it as a tool to teach your kid about investing early. The cons would be that, again, the child gains full control when they become an adult. There are fewer tax advantages, especially if you end up hitting that kiddie tax. And a big one here is there's potential financial aid impacts. So if you have something that's in your child's name and then they do go to college and they are trying to get financial aid, if there's a substantial amount of money in this account, it could potentially affect the amount of money they get for school.
Great call out. I think that call out from the effect of financial aid is huge, right? Because then that money is aligned to their name, shows that they have that, or even any type of other legal things that might happen.
Yeah. The flexibility can be a gift, but it also requires planning. So again, it's really important to think about which account will work for your family.
This one shocked me. I did not know that kids can have Roth IRAs.
Yes, kids can have Roth IRAs if and only if they have earned income from legitimate jobs. If you're have a baby and you're thinking, what account can I open for them? A Roth IRA is not the account. I am a rule follower and I would not recommend trying to stretch the rules here and only open a Roth IRA when your kid actually has earned income. But that earned income could be from something like babysitting, lifeguarding, part time jobs, and family business if you're self employed out there. But that needs to be done properly. So I would make sure to look up the rules around that. Now, just like with an adult Roth IRA, there are contribution limits. For 2026, that's $7,000 or the amount of earned income, whichever is lower. So what does that mean? If your teenager earned $4,000 during the year, they can only contribute up to $4,000.
What happens if they need that money later?
Great question. So original contributions, the money that you put into this account can generally be withdrawn anytime, tax-free and penalty-free. Now, the earnings, the money that your money is making, that has to generally stay invested until your child is 59 and a half and the account has been open for at least 5 years. Now, you can take out early withdrawals, but there will be penalties. You will pay ordinary income tax and a 10% penalty. There are a couple important exceptions. First time home purchase, certain education expenses, and disability situations. If you're in one of those situations, you may want to look further into those rules. But the pro here of the Roth IRA, there could be decades of growth. That money, remember, is in there growing tax free, and it's a Roth account. Eventually, when your child is 59 and a half, they can take out those earnings tax free. It also can teach your child investing early. The cons would be earned income are required, and not everybody has a child at working age or with a job. This has more of a retirement focus. If you're thinking, I want to save for my kid to help them pay for something like a wedding or something else that's in their 20s or 30s or 40s, this isn't necessarily going to help because, again, just the contributions can be taken out anytime, but the earnings have to stay in until 59 and a half. And that means there's less short-term flexibility.
This makes me feel like it's less about raising rich kids and more about raising financially capable adults.
Exactly. Could you imagine if our parents or anybody's parents out there gave them a starter retirement account? I mean, imagine any of that money is really helpful. And not only just the money, but the education piece to know, okay, I already have this investment account. When I get my first job, what other steps should I be doing as a new adult now in the working force to help with my own retirement?
Yeah. Okay, so what if someone wants flexibility without education restrictions or retirement rules?
So now we are landing at a traditional brokerage account. And this is actually where we landed for the account for Bex because of the different cons of the other accounts. It just didn't work for what you wanted for Bex. You wanted complete flexibility without education restrictions or retirement rules. This is a regular investment account. You can invest in anything in the stock market. I would again recommend sticking to low cost index funds. We have Bex's plan and a low cost S&P 500 index plan, which that essentially tracks 500 companies in the stock market. So you're well diversified there. And this can be used for almost any future goal. There's no IRS contribution limit on a standard brokerage account. So there's far fewer restrictions.
Also, the account is in my name. It's actually mine and Leah's name. It is not in his name. So while the money is intended for him, God forbid, like say like I needed 10K for something when I'm older. Like I don't even know what. Not that I would ever want to take money out of his account, but like life or death scenario, I would still be able to use that money if I needed it. But he also can't have access to it when he's 18 and buy a brand new $50,000 car when he turns 18, which is the most important reason for myself. All right. Can you explain the capital gains taxes to me like I'm 5? Because I hear the phrase consistently.
For capital gains tax, so this means essentially you're asking, like, what happens when I take money out of this account? And an example is if you invested $1,000 if in Bex's account and it grew to $1,500 and then you sold it, the $500 profit is the capital gain. That is what will be taxed. If investments are held for less than a year, then those gains are taxed at regular income, whatever your tax bracket is. If the investments are held for longer than a year, then there's a lower tax brackets, either 0, 15, or 20%. You'd have to look up which bracket you fall into. But again, when it comes to investing, you should be putting money in accounts in investments that you don't plan to touch for a very long time. I would say like a 10-year horizon. And something I also want to bring up, which is it's so important to remember to put beneficiaries on these accounts. because if you don't have one listed, then it's up to the state and next of kin of where the money goes. Beneficiaries listed on any investment account will actually even override a will that you have in place. You could have the same information in your will to say, like, this account goes to Bex, but then you also want to make sure Bex is listed as the beneficiary.
Hmm. Technically, you can pull out the money at any time, but selling investment could create taxes depending on the gains.
Exactly. And this flexibility can feel emotionally safer for some families, but it can also create temptation to dip into long term saving investments too often. Like you mentioned, if you had to, you could.
Yeah, but that's life. I'm saying like life or death. Like, am I like I'm in the hospital? I'm gonna die unless I spend $10,000 on this.
But
I
you
mean,
should
like,
have your own finances stable first. You should have 10 grand to spend from your own.
fair, fair, fair. I'm never touching it.
So pros to this account and why we both chose this account for our kids: total flexibility, accessible anytime, broad investment options. And the cons are taxable growth, fewer tax advantage, and emotionally easier to interrupt long-term investing.
For myself, I have, and we love transparency here. Leah and I are on Bex's account together, and we have an auto draft from our mutual checking account for $250 a month that gets put in to his account. I think that the expected by the time he's 18, with just staying consistent there, I think it's like 20,000. He'll, when he turns 18, that's how much he'll have. And our intention with that money is either to keep it until there's a big decision he's making, whether he wants to put a down payment on a house, whether he wants to go to college or whatever that looks like, to be able to help fund those things. Hopefully, Lee and I are in a great financial position where we can support him in those as well, where it's not we're not just relying on those. But that's how we set it up. That's what we're able to afford to do. It'll be interesting. I guess the question is, do you open a second one if you have a second kid, or do you just put more money and then that money just gets split between them? Like, is it better to have more in one or split into two?
I would say, again, the answer goes back to your family and what's works best for you. If it's
Mm,
easier for you to keep the finances separate so that you know exactly how much of it is intended for Bex and how much
mm,
would be intended for the second child. If you're always going to just split whatever is in the account 50-50, you could then add them both as a beneficiary and put the
mm.
percentage at the beneficiary level. It's personal choice.
Interesting. I feel like this episode made investing for kids feel way more approachable and way less intimidating.
Yeah, and that's really the goal. You don't need to do everything perfectly. You just need to start making intentional decisions for your family. So, like I said at the beginning, if you're not in a financial stable place yourself, then don't feel pressure to go open one of these accounts. Make sure you are getting yourself financially stable first and do something small like opening that high yield savings account or start with some financial education with your kids. Those are very low cost or no cost really to you to start doing. And then once you're financially stable, choose whichever account works best for your family type. Just because your friend or person on Instagram has 7 accounts for their kids, that doesn't mean that's the best choice for you.
And if you want to ask Alex what might be the best choice for you, you can access her through our Patreon. Direct access to ask her any questions that you might want on Discord. So if you're not joined our Patreon yet, go now to patreon.com/Becky Hater. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for the suggestion. I'm curious. I'm going to leave you guys with a question here, and I'd love for some feedback around it. What is one financial lesson that you wish someone taught you earlier in life? I could think of a million, but I would love to hear some feedback. If this episode has helped you simplify investing for kids, send it to another parent who might need to hear it. Alex?
Because money is emotional and you deserve to feel safe with it.
Love you guys. See you guys in 2 weeks.